Well, welcome once again to our devotional time. This year, during our Lenten devotions, myself and Pastor Vicki Troutman will be bringing you a short devotion each week. And so I invite you to journey along with us as we share some of our feelings and some of our insights into this journey we call Lent. I found myself this year beginning to think, saying, Gordon, how deep do you want to get into Lent this year? I mean, there's so much going on in life. And then I caught myself and I said, well, what kind of question is that? How deep do I want to get involved in Lent? I remember my seminary Hebrew professor, Professor Lind, who instructed us in the class, us seminarians, to dig deep into the original languages that the scriptures were written in. And he'd often say to us seminarians, deep calls to deep. I have to admit, I found that statement causing me to smile a little bit this year, because it's very accurate. We've all been into a lot of deep things this year. As many of us have struggled with some aspect of the depth of our lives in the midst of this COVID-19 world. Some of us even worry about our own health and our own well-being. Or maybe we spend some time concerned with what our future holds. And therefore, it's almost impossible not to live a deep life. Currently, many of us are looking inward, trying to decide where we stand with this COVID-19 world we live in. And for others of us, we've started looking outward, wondering, what has the landscape become since COVID-19 has crossed our path? There's others of us who are looking all around us and seeing things that we have not seen before. For example, maybe seeing the importance of moving from a more superficial relationship to one that is more established and grounded, one that brings more profound happiness and contentment. I actually stopped for a few moments and considered, how do you describe to someone else what it means to live into that deep space? And as I began to read and research and study about it, I became amazed and was struck with amusement. Because oftentimes that phrase, deep calls to deep, has been used in a way that means that we actually take the time to figure out what is ours, our responsibility, and what is not ours, what is not our responsibility. Of course, my mind jumped to the spiritual side of things and began to think more specifically about what is it that God asks of me? What is it God asks of you? And likewise, what doesn't God ask of me? And what doesn't God ask of you? You see, as a United Methodist pastor, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what God is asking of me. And sometimes there's that deep call, a deep call to serve God with all of my heart. I have to say that sometimes that deep call is to serve others in the same way that I would like to be served. Oh, there's other times that deep call is to living a devoted life to the church and the life of the church. Sometimes I've discovered that deep call in my life is to be a good neighbor, even when it is almost impossible. And of course, that deep part that I often miss in my life is one that calls me to be active in my community. Oh, there are other times when that deep call from God is a call for me to spend more time in prayer. And there's always that deep call that I hear for the need for me to be in church and to have that most profound personal encounter with Jesus Christ every Sunday. And yet most every day that deep call of Christ compels me of the need to tell others of the good news of Jesus Christ every chance I get. You see, while these statements aren't completely off base, I'm a little anxious because they mostly focus on me, as opposed to the part of my faith that relies on God and upon Jesus Christ. And what I've discovered is this, that so much of our faith has to be focused on what we do, what we are called to do. That's the deep thing of our faith. Not for the free ride, but for the fulfilling of the call that we have been given by Jesus Christ. And that is to be truthful in the way that we live our lives, so much so that it can be no mistake by others that we are reflecting the love of Jesus Christ in the world. But you see, the outcomes from that belongs to God. There are things that we do not control. We are a part of the equation of God's work, but we are not the total equation. It is God who takes the deepness of the longing in our hearts to serve and to please God. And then God is the catalyst to bring someone else to experience that goodness. A lot is asked of us. But I have to say, if you go into the deep side of our faith, there's a lot of things that we take upon ourselves that are not asked of us. We are called to serve our neighbor, but the change this makes in the world is God's realm. We are called to spend time with our worshiping community, but the profound encounter is God's realm. And our responsibility is to be open in such a way that when the deepness and that deep love and compassion of God comes into our worship experience, that we are open to receiving it. You see, telling others the good news is part of what we're called to do. But the change that comes with others learning about that love is God's realm and responsibility. So my friends, as we start our Lenten journey this season, I invite you to wade through the deep issues of faith with me. And let us start by remembering what is our responsibility. Faith is not a free ride. But let us also not take on responsibilities which belong in the hands of God. And if we do that, my friends, we can take some of the pressure right off ourselves and remind ourselves that it's not all about us, but it's all about the work of God in the world. Happy journey, my friends, and we will see you next week with another thought. God bless.